what's to expect from in the afterlife process? You think what would you advise? What direction would advise to go to in the afterlife? That's
well. I just want to say something before I get into that. I want to say that there is a pathological difference between something that's like, if you take, for an example, a backdrop and you cause them suffering, there is a pathological difference in how they exhibit and feel the sensations and what they're able to process, and how deep that they can go to someone who is fire spirit. Okay, there is a difference between what that looks like. So there are, I mean, you know, you can actually look at psychopaths and sociopaths, and you can see that there is a difference. Some of them are backdrops. Some of them are different kinds of hybrids. Some of them are created and engineered to be that. So pathologically speaking, you know, I mean, that could be a show all on of its own. It would be fascinating because you can see that by actions and how they process what they feel, there is a difference in how that looks versus someone who's, you know, a real, as I call it, fire spirit. Now, in terms of navigating through death, so I had this experience, and I'll just explain it, because before I had this experience, I never had an experience like this one. But I had, it was like a dream, and I had these monks who would come to me and said, we need your assistance in helping one of our special monks who just died to navigate him through so that he makes it out, but we need your assistance. So I went to their monastery. This is all astral, right? I went to the monastery and connected with the monk that had died, and he was a special monk. And the best way I can describe it is, his spirit was next to my spirit, and I said to him, just follow me and follow my promptings, because we have to navigate through all of the false light. And each of the false lights are connected to organs of the body that are connected to realms. So I took him and I navigated him through this elaborate system, and each had a different color, until eventually we were out of all of the systems and all of the colors. And that's, you know, and that ended up being on the outside of it, the area that was outside of all of the false lights. And it was a, again, right, it was like a darkness. And once he was there, he was free.
So he made it out of the matrix, basically. So that's what you're saying. So well, I hope if I fall first, you'll navigate me through
it. Okay, what I want to also say is this. Now, the architects and the magicians and the, you know, demiurge and all of these forces and principalities, they will use what you love the most in your life. And they will create that when you die so that you are compelled to follow them. So they will create the illusion of your perfect idea of what heaven is, or of your family that you loved, or your whoever, whatever. They will create that, and they will put that there so that you are welcomed. And it's all warm. Again, right? They can cause you to feel euphoria. They can cause you to feel anything. They can create these imageries. But essentially, if it's connected to the storyline of your life, here, this is your hologram life. This is where you get to do all the work, but you've been living a setup most of what you've been living is part of that setup as an imposter. And there's, it's just a counterfeit life. So if you're mindful of what that is, and you realize that, let's say, for example, you have children, but because you have children, it doesn't mean that you're the parent of the child universally. Universally, that child is its own universe. So the traps are always going to be connected to your heartstrings. It's always going to be connected to your idea of heaven or your idea of salvation or your idea of whatever. They're going to recreate it. I suggest that people start dissolving the connection in their minds of all of that and just go inward, because the deep is within you, and that isn't connected to any manipulation. So typically speaking, perceptions are manipulated and their emotions are manipulated. So
heaven is not an archetype, mind-induced archetype or place. It's a state of mind, basically. It's your true spirit.
Same with hell.
Spirit.
Right? Hell is, created by us too.
Right.
If you think it and you feed it, it turns into a realm.
But when you see how much our free will is stepped over and tampered with and manipulated down here, do we have access to free will? Did we make the decision to come here and really live this life, or were we
Yes.
lured into coming here?
You know what? All of the above is true. It has to be all of the above. All right, because we're creating our own mirror systems, our own inversions. We're creating it all, but we're also allowing other beings to come in and screw with us to create it. So the answer is that all of that is true. But ultimately, you can't go through life giving life to something that took your life. So that has to go. That has to be dissolved. You have to take it back on all levels. And by doing that, that means that, okay, so let's just say you agree to being hijacked. Let's just say you agree to parts of this experiment experience, but not all of it. A little bit of extra stuff happened. You still agreed to this, and you still have to take your power back. Really, everything becomes irrelevant when you start taking your power back, because none of these things can have an influence in you and over you unless you give it to them.
Yes, but their perspective is from within, from inside the prison, the jail.
Right.
So
right, and the perspective has to start from that to get to the macro, because the macro is going to reflect the micro, and vice versa. So, it's just the same as starving a parasite, right?
Mm.
Look at when reptilians or succubi attach themselves to a person and they take their energy. But I'm going to give the example which will probably be better understood. When you have a succubi that attaches itself to a host, a human, what happens is that the host human will begin to have symptomologies reflective of that attachment. This can be, addictions, all addictions, sex, alcohol, drugs. This host is going to be living the symptomology of whatever that succubi is doing. So it's going to be doing that to feed it. And then the succubi is going to be injecting the drug to keep the host happy and addicted. Okay? But let's just say that the host is deciding to do drugs, or is a pathological addict of sex, a sex addict. If they starve the succubi, they would have to stop the symptomology. They would have to stop it. They would realize that through stopping that action, they will be starving the succubi to the point where the succubi has to go and detach. So When you feed something, you make it stronger. But when you don't feed it, it has to go.
Right. Should our true spirit, once we get out or try to get out of the matrix in the afterlife process, look for, wave off all the shapes and forms, attachments, leave all attachments behind, and look for sheer energy, or to become pure energy, to get closer to the source, or it's just a question.
I mean, I think that if essentially what this is all about is, yes, getting to the point where you are no longer being manipulated by the things that are pulling your heartstrings. And I don't mean this, to detach in a way that makes you not empathic anymore. You're sort of going beyond everything. So, for example, in order for evil to exist, love has to exist. Okay? You can actually argue that love created evil by virtue of the fact that it exists in the way that it exists. It's created within itself a duality. It's created within itself an opposition.
Both sides generate loosh.
Right. But we're moving beyond all that. So really, we have to get to the point where all perception needs to be dissolved within us. And that means all attachments. And just to see it for what it is, because when you don't have a dual system, you don't have a dual nature. When you don't have a dual nature, at that point you realize that you already are everything. You already are. So you don't really need the extreme opposite of this or the extreme opposite of that to figure it out. We needed to have the opposite to figure it out. So we needed to create this dual system just to go back to the very place that we started anyway, as a reminder. So ultimately, we need to, dissolve all perception. Perception, in one way or another, is all the counterfeit hacking that has been done, that we've done to ourselves.
Right.
When I was in the deep, it was just the deep. There was nothing in there. I realized that every single solitary thought that manifested in this body from the moment I entered was a part of something else.
So the void is closer to source then?
Yes, the void is the source.
Right.